You can support us by subscribing. The fierce war between the Ukrainian armed forces and the occupying Russian troops is rekindling on the southern front, which has been on a standstill for a long time. While Russian troops try to strengthen their defense capabilities in Zaporizhia, Melitopol, Kherson and Crimea, it seems that the Ukrainian armed forces will not allow the Russian effort. The Ukrainian Air Force and artillery are bombarding Russian positions every day and crushing the Russian rear lines. On the other hand, Russian troops in the southern region are making various attempts to measure the capabilities of the Ukrainian army in the Black Sea and the Dnipro River. Currently in the Black Sea, the Russian Navy cannot approach the Ukrainian shores due to Ukraine's Harpoon, Neptune, and RBS-17 Squirrel defense systems. Russian warships are pushed back into the middle of the Black Sea and the other shore. In turn, the Russians used the Dnipro River and Russian armed combat boats and light landing boats use Russian troops to deploy to strategic positions in the region. But this is a foolish move for the invading Russian troops because the Ukrainian armed forces maintains firing control along the Dnipro River. Although the Russian troops were aware of this, their latest attempt cost them dearly. Russian invading troops intensified the operations of sabotage and reconnaissance groups in the archipelago area at the mouth of the Dnipro the past day. The Ukrainian armed forces gave the necessary answer to the Russian invaders concentrated in this region in no time. The Ukrainian armed forces shut down and destroyed 5 light-engined Russian boats carrying Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups. It is still unclear what kind of weapon the attack was carried out. The Kremlin administration has not yet commented on the attack on the Russian reconnaissance unit. The Ukrainian Defense Forces liquidated approximately 127,500 Russian soldiers with its latest attack. Russian troops continue to suffer significant losses in Ukraine. The Moscow army began using additional civilian medical facilities in the Luhansk region to treat wounded soldiers. In the city of Luhansk, in the maternity ward of the City of Hospital No. 3 and the maternity ward of the regional hospital, the invaders deployed field hospitals to treat Russian soldiers. Russia's war against Ukraine has already caused a massive humanitarian crisis, upset the global economy, and poses the most serious threat to international security and stability today. Both Ukraine and Russia used the winter to train their soldiers, rebuild units, and prepare for the spring offensive. The extraordinary Western sanctions on Russia, although eroding its economy, do not seem to have affected Vladimir Putin's determination to continue his invasion. Also on January 3rd, when Denis Shmyhal, the Prime Minister of Ukraine, addressed the damage caused by Russia's all-out war against Ukraine at the beginning of June 2022, during a government session, he pointed out that this question was not purely rhetorical. The damage from the war to Ukraine was estimated at US $350 billion, and this figure has now doubled to $700 billion. Despite this incredible devastation, the resolve of the Ukrainian people to defend their country grew stronger, and it became clear that Ukraine would eventually restore the internationally recognized 1991 borders. However, the longer this vicious war drags on, the human and economic costs will increase exponentially. Russia's unprovoked war would end if Putin came to his senses, which is unlikely as his delusional state seems irreversible. This leaves only one viable option to end this blatant violation of international law and the worldwide crisis on the scale of genocide in the near future, and that is to stop the unjustified postponements of NATO member states, starting with the US, and send all the weapons they actually possess to Ukraine. Days after delivering battle tank promises, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is promptly urging his Western supporters to send more heavy weapons to Ukraine and help fend off a new Russian attack. Throughout 2022, NATO member states cautiously and gradually provided Ukraine with increasingly better military support, both in quantity and content, to end this war and the imminent threat to all Western countries. The last of these supports was provided by France. France recently announced that it will send 12 additional Caesar howitzers to Ukraine. Also, France discussed training Ukrainian pilots to fly French warplanes as part of military assistance to Kiev in the war with Russia. Speaking after his meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart Oleksiy Reznikov in Paris, Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu stated that France will send 150 personnel to Poland to train 600 Ukrainian soldiers per month. Paris has already delivered 18 Caesar howitzers to Kiev. Lecornu stated that the additional 12 Caesar howitzers will be financed by €200 million fund approved by the French parliament. In a statement, Reznikov said that France's decision to supply Kiev with light AMX-10 RC armored combat vehicles this month had a snowball effect, with other allies promising to send tanks later. Russian leader Putin has no intention of ending the Ukraine war despite the hundreds of thousands of casualties he has suffered. In fact, when the spring months come, it is almost impossible for the conflicts not to escalate. As Russia prepares for another attack on Ukraine, another 200,000 Russian soldiers may soon join the war effort. Ukrainian, Western and Russian sources agree that Russia is preparing for an imminent attack as the war fills a year. Protecting his maximalist goals in Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin plans to mobilize 200,000 or more new troops to join the war, NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg said. Russian sources state that military recruiters are trying to recruit the unemployed into voluntary contract service within Russia. At the same time, tens of thousands of prisoners joined the mercenary group in Ukraine, fighting the largely destroyed Kremlin forces. It marks a turning point in the 23-year rule of Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin's decision to allow a group of mercenaries to round up Russian convicts to support the weakening war effort. The policy exceeds legal precedent in Russia, and by pardoning some brutally treated criminals and sending them back to their homes, it risks triggering more violence in society and underscores the price Mr. Putin is prepared to pay to avoid defeat. Nearly 40,000 prisoners have joined Russian forces since July. Ukraine claims about 30,000 people escaped or were killed or injured, but this number could be independently verified. Separately, multiple universities began requiring students to provide military enrollment data as part of preparations for the second wave of mobilization in February 2023. While the Kremlin administration strengthens the strength of the Moscow army for spring offensives, the Western allies are trying to get their best help to update the ammunition reserves of the Kiev troops. France and Australia will collaborate on a multi-million-dollar project to produce 155mm artillery shells for Ukraine. French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced to his Ukrainian counterpart Alexei Reznikov during a meeting in Paris last day that France will assist in acquiring Groundmaster 200 radar systems for Ukraine's air defense. The GM200, a medium-range radar manufactured by the French company Thales Group, can provide launch and strike threat coordinates from multiple simultaneous threats. Also, France and Australia expressed their joint commitment to Ukraine's security and their determination to continue supporting Ukraine, urging the Russian aggressor to withdraw from Ukraine immediately. Another aid came from Poland. Poland launched a large-scale repair operation to repair damaged Ukrainian artillery and armored vehicles and return them to the battlefield. However, Polish Deputy Defense Minister Wojciech Skurwicz wrote on Twitter that Poland is not discussing giving F-16 warplanes to Ukraine. Critics argue that the allies' reluctance to supply Ukraine with F-16 warplanes and long-range ATACMS missiles will prevent Kiev from launching a major offensive and liberating Ukrainian territory. Skurwicz's tweet was in response to another tweet that claimed Poland would disarm itself if it gave Ukraine any of its American-made F-16s. Discussions revolve around the possibility that Poland could supply Ukraine with military aircraft as well as tanks. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki stated that providing fighter jets or other aircraft such as the F-16 would only be possible in close coordination with other allies. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden stated on January 30 that he would not send American warplanes to Ukraine. It does not seem possible at the moment for Volodymyr Zelensky's Western friends to send their F-16 warplanes to Ukraine. But let's not forget that they agreed to deliver to Kiev the battle tanks what the West resisted. We'll have to wait and see if the same acceptance will be true of warplanes. When the weather warms up, the Ukrainian front lines will start to burn in flames. In this process, we all know that the strong hand will lead the war. If the West wants Ukraine to win this war, it must constantly feed the Kiev army. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Thank you for watching us.